Hi, and welcome to the Lensrentals podcast, where we talk about images and the people who make them. I'm Roger Sakala, the founder of Lensrentals.com.
Welcome to the Lensrentals podcast. I'm Ryan Hill. I'm here with Joey Miller.
Hey there.
And Zach Sutton.
Hey guys.
And today we're going to talk about some new camera bodies that are coming out, either have been released recently or are coming soon. And I want to get right into it and start with the Canon EOS R5. And I'll start with a question for you, Joey. Sure. You're familiar generally with the stats and specs on this. What is, I guess, a feature you're most excited about?
Probably the higher resolution and that 8K is kind of cool.
Yeah, 8K video is a big deal.
I mean, it's obviously with the naming scheme, a lot of people have been covering this. The R5 is basically a replacement for the 5D series. And that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, this is the step up from the original R versus the RP, which is kind of like a 6D.
Mm-hmm.
I think as long as they, the video in the 5D Mark IV was kind of disappointing for a lot of people.
Yes, I'll agree there.
And I feel like maybe this is Canon's attempt to make up for that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm surprised I didn't understand the naming scheme. I think at this point I've given up on all cameras naming schemes and trying to understand
That's all
them.
Nonsense.
But the replacement to the 5D collection definitely seems to make a lot of sense. I think the video is, 8K seems unfathomable, but I'm impressed that they're doing it.
Oh, and it's in full frame. Which is,
it's 8K
and
in
it's
full frame.
full frame. Yeah, exactly. I'm mostly impressed that they have sort of listened to the demands of the market and that they're putting the in-body image stabilization into the camera. Obviously, Sony has had that for years. And I think that it kind of was left out on the EOS R. And it kind of asked a lot of questions as to why. So I'm glad that they're doing that.
Yeah, I'm glad about that too. Like you said, Sony's been leading the way on that. And finally, Canon's doing it. Fuji just did it. We'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, I think that's a huge step forward too.
Haven't they previously, and there's going to be a lot of this, you are both more familiar with photography technology than I am. So I'm kind of going to be coming at this from a layman's perspective. But hasn't Canon previously come out and said we're not interested in in-body image stabilization?
So I had spoke to their marketing team at Photo Plus, what was it? Not last year, but the year before, when the EOS R first came out. And that was the one big question I asked is, why no in-body stabilization? And their stance at that point was if they thought that the market needed it, that they would do it. But at that point, they didn't think it needed it. But I think that they caught a lot of flack when they didn't have that in the R. It seems like they've changed their tune again, which is great. And I really have to commend Canon for, how quickly they've expanded the R series. Kind of as a reminder, it came out about a year and a half ago. And they've already got 11 lenses for the series, which in comparison to Sony or anybody like that isn't much. But I think it is worth commending that they're really kind of aggressively attacking mirrorless, albeit, they were about 5 years later than a lot of the other competition.
Right. I feel like they were just really nervous about it and finally put the R out there. And then they were like, oh, wait, people actually do like this. Well, you know what? We're not going to develop any more EF lenses. We're only going to do RF. And now we're just going to go full into it. And that's kind of what this feels like. So
to get back to the image stabilization, a question for both of you. I don't fully understand coming from the video side. So I know obviously in-body image stabilization, an advantage for lenses that don't have IS built in, but it also works in conjunction with IS in a lens. Can you explain to me how that works and what the advantage is of combining the two?
I don't know exactly how Canon does it or is going to do it. But I know in Sony, at least, what happens is it doesn't use the full set of, 5-axis stabilization. When you're using it in conjunction with lens stabilization, it reduces one of the two so that your total is still like 4 or 5 axes. But I think the idea is it makes them more effective at that.
Okay, that makes sense. So maybe your lens IS isn't having to do as much work and is therefore more effective in the axes that are
I'm kind of
active.
talking out my ass here about this, but I think that's the general idea.
And I imagine it varies from manufacturer to manufacturer.
For sure.
Okay. And another question, since you mentioned the R, both of you have used the EOS R at this point, right? Have you been relatively happy with it? What are some like pros and cons?
Yeah, I like it. It's basically like using a 5D4 in live view mode, just smaller. And if you like that, it's kind of great.
Yeah, I would agree. I've used a number of mirrorless systems, and keep in mind, I'm stubborn. I'm like a stubborn old man, and I'm still on the EOS system for most of my work. But in terms of mirrorless systems, I think the Canon EOS R is probably the easiest to just pick up and use, because it does seem like they had a lot of foresight in mind on just those that would be transitioning into the mirrorless system, whereas people like Sony have, sort of developed their business model in a lot of ways from the ground up on the mirrorless platform. Mm-hmm. So I find it an easier system to use personally when it comes to just grabbing it and going. I generally like the system, but I think I shared a lot of concern with it that everybody else did, with it being Canon's first real push into the mirrorless market. And I think me and a lot of other people were waiting for, the second rendition of it, which looks to be pretty great.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And their lens lineup is stellar.
Yeah, and will only get better quickly.
I mean, that 7200 is awesome.
I want to say on the video side, so they've confirmed 8K 30p with a full frame sensor readout, which is awesome. What we don't know yet, and what Canon has typically lagged behind a little bit with compared to like Sony and especially Panasonic, is one, internal recording bit depth. So we don't yet know if that's, I'm assuming an 8-bit 420. If they're talking about 8K 30p, probably 8-bit 420. But we don't know yet output bit depth. So like Sony, a lot of their A7 series will output 10-bit 422. Panasonic will also output 10-bit 422. It's a pretty common thing in like video-centric SLR style cameras these days. And Canon hasn't always gone along that route. So I'm curious to see where that ends up.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to know. I mean, you're definitely not going to be like the old days on the 5D2 throwing Magic Lantern on it and getting raw output or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. We won't be carrying any Magic Lantern equipped.
Oh, God. I'm so glad we got rid of those a long time ago.
Not that long ago. We had Magic Lantern stuff until relatively recently. But yeah, just to kind of give like a tech spec wrap up on this, if you haven't read these sheets, what we're talking about is a 45 megapixel sensor, I believe.
Yeah.
45. That's the rumor right now, I believe. Mm-hmm.
Compared to, anybody know what the EOS R is offhand?
30.
30? Oh,
30,
not
I believe,
bad.
yeah.
I was expecting lower.
Same as the 5D4.
Okay. And then 12 frame per second burst shooting with the mechanical shutter, 20 frame per second burst shooting with the electronic shutter.
Didn't you mention there's an R6 coming, Zach?
Yeah, so that kind of just hit my email this morning, and this is from Canon Rumors, and they said that Canon is expecting to announce an R6 as well, and they're expecting to announce that sometime here in May, with a June launch is the plan, but we'll see.
And that makes sense.
Yeah, and it looks like it's just an R5 with a lot of features stripped from it, so it's a 20 megapixel frame. Full frame sensor. It does 4K at 60p, no dual card slots, no top down screen, slightly lower resolution, slightly lower build quality, but probably quite a bit more cheaper.
Yeah. And our version of the 60.
Okay. Yeah. Now I see what you meant by the naming convention. Mm-hmm. So R5 sort of like 5D, R6 sort of like 60.
Yeah. Maybe they'll have an R7 at some point. That's like a 70 Mark II. Doubt it, but you never know.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing I do want to mention on the R5 is that there has been no confirmation on the price. And I've heard rumors that it is going to be extremely expensive.
Oh, really? Like more than $3,500?
I've heard rumors that it could possibly breach over $9,000.
Oh,
whoa.
Which, in retrospect, how many cameras actually have 8K that are under the $10,000 mark at this point? So
yeah, Canon's cinema cameras don't.
Right, exactly. So obviously it's rumors. Take it with a grain of salt.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, that seems really
see-
unrealistic.
I did see some prices on it where I was just like, oh, like it. This is without question probably the most of the last 5 years, the only camera that I've actually been really excited about. I feel like a lot of marginal updates have happened, especially with Canon, but that price is very scary, you know, if the rumors are true.
I mean, that outprices their other new body, the 1DX Mark III, by a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Which is next on our list. That's a perfect segue.
Hey, look at that.
Hey, sticking in the Canon line, we are going to talk about the 1DX Mark III, which is out already?
It's out.
Okay.
Or at least we saw it at the WPPI. We actually got hands-on with it there.
Oh, yeah. It is available and in stock on our website right now.
Oh, hey.
So, yes, this
Perfect.
is out. Have either of you had a chance to shoot with it yet?
Just for a few minutes at WPPI. I mean, it's a 1DX body.
Mhm.
Do sports shooters still use those?
Yeah, I think
what's the
so.
market for this now?
I probably sports photographers, sports and wildlife.
I mean, do you know
Yeah.
anybody shooting this stuff, Zach?
I personally don't. I know I have a friend who shoots a 1DX, but I think it's the original 1DX. And he shoots it for a lot of lifestyle and fashion stuff, and he likes the speed of it. But a lot of sports photographers have, I assume, transitioned over to like the A9 or the, you know, competing systems. Canon as a whole has sort of neglected its EOS line this last year and a half. And I'm not sure what the excitement is around the 1DX Mark III.
Right. And this is, I mean, it's the same problem I have with the new Nikon D6. They're top of the line cameras, sure, but why? Like none of the specs are any, I mean, it's just like minorly, incrementally better than the previous generation. But there's nothing wrong with those cameras. I could still go out and take a D5. Hell, I could go out and take a D4 or an original 1DX and do the same work I could do with a 1DX Mark III or a D6 and still, you know, get basically the same results. I don't know what the return on investment would be.
Yeah, and it is a pretty niche market and only getting more so like professional full-time sports and wildlife photographers.
Well, and that's kind of the thing is the stats on the 1DX Mark III is 20 frames a second, which is incredibly impressive.
Mm-hmm.
That said, it is a 20 megapixel full frame sensor. And I don't want to like try to continue on with the megapixel war, but 20 megapixels is pretty low for today's standards.
Right. The A9 has been doing 20 frames a second for how many years now? And it's 24 megapixels.
Right.
And that minor difference becomes a much larger difference when you are cropping, which is something you are going to have to do as a sports and wildlife photographer.
Right. And that 1DX,
Exactly.
It's only 20 frames a second in live view.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's only in live view. Raw capture at 5.5K though for video.
That's something I was going to mention about the 1DX Mark II is that its time has sort of passed, but back in the era when the 5D3 and 5D2 were getting really, really popular for video, the 1DX2 was also a surprisingly popular video camera because it would give you a 4K 10-bit internally, which is mega rare in that style. So it was a weird little corner of that market was video shooters. And I think that might continue into this because, it'll give you raw video capture internally at 5.5K, which is impressive. I say impressive. It's an impressive stat for a camera sort of in this class and aimed at this market. I could see that coming in handy if you are a news photographer and have to occasionally shoot video. I still wouldn't pick this up as a video camera. There are other options that are going to be cheaper, especially like a Blackmagic pocket camera will give you pretty similar specs.
It sounds like it's going to be cheaper than the R5. So,
we'll see about that. We don't know a price for this yet either, right? The 1DX3. Oh, wait,
we
we do.
do.
I'm dumb. It's out.
$6,500.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Yeah, but considering that like the A7 or excuse me, the A9 Mark II is, $2,000 less than that. It's a hard sell.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I guess it's because they're trying to push it for the Tokyo Olympics this summer, which is that going to happen?
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see if those Olympics happen. And I have to assume that was at least part of the reason it got released now.
Yeah, same with the D6.
Yeah.
They always try and put their big flagships out for the Olympics.
Speaking of Nikon and the D6, the next on our list is the Nikon D780, which is also available right now in stock. It's just a new camera body. Has anybody had a chance to shoot with this?
Another incremental upgrade.
Yeah. This one, I put the spec list together, and again, I'm coming kind of out of the dark on a lot of this stuff, but this one didn't seem super exciting to me.
No, not at all. Some slight upgrades carried over from the Z6, namely the live view focusing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Which, okay, that's exciting, maybe. If you have a 750 already, I don't really see a reason to upgrade to a 780 unless you really want to do live view stuff. What's Nikon doing right now? Like, what are they doing?
Yeah, it seems relatively affordable, at least, I guess. I don't know.
It seems fascinating to me that, obviously Canon, the 1DX, that's not going away just because of the Olympics and sports photographers, and a really great telephoto lens costs thousands and thousands of dollars. So those people aren't looking to switch anytime soon. But aside from that, Canon has been full focus on their mirrorless system, whereas Nikon hasn't. They came out with the Z Series lenses and camera body, and then I don't want to say it's been abandoned, but it doesn't seem to have nearly as much of the releases as obviously Sony's been having, as well as Canon. And it makes me kind of question what Nikon's planning on doing.
Yeah, it seems like if you're in, I don't know, fifth place in an already narrowing market field, that what you need to do is, maybe narrow the line a little bit. Mm-hmm. You don't need to carry 10 different cameras. You need to carry maybe 3 or 4.
Didn't they just add raw output to the Z6?
Mm-hmm. They did. And I believe they were the first SLR style body to do a raw output over HDMI.
Mm-hmm. And they could do more of that stuff.
I guess you already covered this a little bit, but generally what are the cons of the Z6? Or what are the pros even? What are the pros and cons of the Z6 so far?
I guess similar to the EOS R line, smaller. Wow.
Smaller is the end of the list.
total loss. I like that it uses XQD cards or what is it? CF Express or whatever.
I think it's XQD in the Z6. Let me check on that.
Yeah, I know it's XQD, but I think you can use CF Express now with a firmware update maybe. There's that. The lens selection's okay. That FTZ adapter makes regular Nikon lenses work perfectly on it. That's kind of cool if you've got old Nikon lenses.
That said, the general idea of an adapter is to make it sort of a transitional product. Mm-hmm. And granted, I don't shoot Nikon, and aside from their, what was it, the 58 millimeter f.95 or whatever it was, aside from that, they don't seem to have a ton of super fast prime lenses in their lineup. Like their development seems to be just quite a bit slower than, even Canon's been doing with their system.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like part of the exciting bit of the Canon EOS R line is that they are going full into it. There's a lot of things coming down the pipe. Like, sure, maybe the cameras right now aren't that spectacular, but that R5 and R6 sound great. Whereas Nikon puts out their mirrorless bodies, kind of a lackluster lineup of lenses, and then kind of, dead air after that. So what am I looking forward to down the line?
A quick update. I looked this up. The Z6 can use CF Express memory cards, but it's limited to Type B cards manufactured by Sony. So it's not quite yet like any card you can. That's the appeal of a universal media standard, but it's not there yet. Maybe in the future.
Yeah, okay. That's a start.
Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about a few more camera bodies that we're excited about.
And now, Lens Rentals brings you a meditation moment. Close your eyes. Lean back and listen to my voice. You feel yourself getting sleepy. Relaxed. Drifting on a cloud. You love this podcast. You want to give this podcast a 5-star rating. You want to write a positive review of it and even subscribe to it. You know that will bring you a feeling of joy and contentment. When I count to 3, you will wake up refreshed and go straight to the review page. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome back to the Lensrentals podcast. I'm here with Joey Miller and Zach Sutton. We're talking new and upcoming camera bodies, and I want to get into the Fuji X-T4, which I'm really excited about.
Hell yes.
Yeah. We get free rentals here. I feel like I mentioned that a lot on the podcast. We get free rentals, if you haven't heard, and having access to basically every camera currently available, every lens currently available. I still, most of the time, if I'm taking a camera home for the weekend just to like have in my bag and shoot, I'm taking an X-T3 most of the time.
Yep, same.
They are doing a great job.
I stand for Fuji.
Yeah, I love the size of the X-T3. I love the lens available. I also love, this is a small thing, but a helpful thing to know before you start to get into a camera system. They have like the only usable app.
I completely agree with that. It's
I love
good.
their app. It's
so
super
good.
easy to use.
It's way better than Nikon's probably the worst. And Leica's not far behind.
I've never used Nikons.
Oh, it's terrible. The Leica one is just as, it's equally as bad. And the Canon one's okay. It's whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The Sony one's fine.
Yeah, I think the Sony and the Canon one have more options for like controlling camera settings, but the Fuji one is better than both of those at like image transfer.
Completely agree.
Which is what I'm using it for most of the time.
Yeah, it's so seamless. So seamless.
So in good news about the X-T4, it seems like pretty much an incremental update to the X-T3, and even to the point that Fuji is not going to stop selling the X-T3.
Which feels weird to me. I mean, it almost feels like...
very weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It almost feels like they were going down that XH1 path and then said, no, we're going to scrap this. And then somewhere down the road, they were like, oh, actually, there were some decent ideas in there. Maybe we can put that into something else. And now we have the X-T4.
Yeah, the biggest difference between the two is probably in-body image stabilization.
I mean, that seems to be about the only big difference. Obviously, Fuji's doing an incredible job coming out with really, really great camera systems and keeping their product line pretty affordable, especially when compared to Sony and Canon.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the spec sheet, it is the same sensor as the X-T3. It doesn't seem to have a lot of big differences over the X-T3. It seems like a very marginal upgrade, but the in-body stabilization is great.
Yeah, and some minor video upgrades, which, if you want to do full HD at 240.
Yeah, that's nice to have if you need it. I found out in researching for this that they removed the 3.5 millimeter mic input, which is odd. So if you are using this for video, that's something to be aware of. It will apparently, or does apparently, ship with a USB-C to 3.5 millimeter adapter, but I would be wary of that maybe not working on every mic.
Right, and I'm really kind of curious. Fuji's always really good about putting out firmware, like useful firmware updates. I'm curious to see how they, as the X-T4 ages, how they use that to differentiate it from the X-T3 even further.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Because I feel like, it's going to have newer technology inside it that should be able to be upgraded better.
Mm-hmm. I like that screen. I like that they changed the LCD on the back. I think that's my only complaint about the X-T3.
Yeah.
Is that I don't love the LCD on the back. I like the idea of being able to just flip it in and not have it out entirely.
Yeah, I agree. And the EVF on the X-T4, just as good as the X-T3, which was pretty decent. So
yeah,
no
I really like that hybrid EVF situation.
Yeah, I think it's pretty great.
So all in all, probably not worth an upgrade if you've got an X-T3 now. That's a perfectly capable camera, unless in-body image stabilization is super important.
Right, but if you're still rocking an X-T1 or X-T2, this is a significant upgrade.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
All right, next, a camera I know Joey's very excited about. Also currently available on our website.
Yeah, well, when it's in stock, it's been running pretty well.
The Leica M10 Monochrom.
Hell yes. Just what you need. An extremely expensive black and white only rangefinder camera.
Very, very expensive. Do you know what it costs retail?
It's like $9,000.
Let me look it up. I'm going to look it up. I bet it's more than that.
I'm going to say it's just under 10. like 9,500.
Oh, not so bad. 8,300 on B&H new.
Oh, it's only 8,300.
You can get a used M monochrome for 3,600
I'm buying one.
Only
from your friends at
Only
lensauthority.com.
Oh, I loved that old M monochrome though. Like
That was my first rental.
For real?
Yeah. You get like a 2-week grace period where they make sure you're not going to show up to work high or something. And then your health insurance and your vacation kicks in, and then you can get your rentals. And my first rental was a Leica M monochrome and a Noctilux.
Oh, you did it right.
I believe,
Yeah, it's like I'm just doing this. I'm going for it.
Oh.
I believe my first rental was the exact same thing.
That's
but
fantastic.
Solely because I was told that I had to rent it. It was almost like a requirement of like, all right, now that you're here, you got to just go way too big for a Leica system. It's probably been my first and only time I've ever used Leica. It's a camera system that I just fundamentally don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Just given the price alone. I know that you're a huge Leica fan, but I think I'm probably too pragmatic for Leica.
Leica is hands down the most polarizing camera brand out there. I will not contest that. I will not contest it at all. The people who like it, like me, we love it. The people who don't like it typically hate it. And I don't hold that against anybody. I really don't. Like, if it's not for you, bless you. Find something you do love.
It really, really helps to not have to pay for it.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
100%. I mean, you and I have talked about our polarizing differences between Leica. Something about a camera, and I realize that it doesn't have a color array filter or anything like that, but something about having a camera that only shoots in black and white feels so painfully arrogant to me, and doesn't seem to have any practical purposes within like the actual industry.
I mean, if I was like, I don't know, it's again, not to advertise for Lensrentals, but it's a perfect rental.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I will never own monochrome. Even if I was going to spend that much money, it's not going to be for a camera that only shoots in black and white. But if I'm going on like a vacation and want some really moody shit when I get back, I would rent a monochrome for sure.
It's got a place, and that place is very special and very niche, but it shines.
Mm-hmm.
It really, really shines. It does.
Green in general looks better in black and white.
Yeah. Leica does very few things, but they do them incredibly well. And they are known for a reason.
A quick technical question. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know in theory why the difference between, say, shooting a Leica monochrome and just shooting a standard Leica and digitally processing your photos into black and white is a fundamentally different thing. Can you explain that at a technical level? Like what the lack of a color filter does to your images?
Yeah. So all of the photo sites on any filter are reading light levels. On a standard color sensor, you have, most cameras, you have a Bayer array. So you've got an array of, it's like a color filter over the sensor for each individual pixel. And on a standard Bayer array, you've got twice as many greens as you do reds and blues, I think. I think that's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to match, like the human eye has the same thing. We're better at detecting the color green than other colors.
Right. And so the sensor is not only having to combine those colors into a single color per pixel site, so you're reducing your resolution. On a monochrome sensor, it's only measuring luminance, like pure luminance. So higher resolution right off the bat, lower noise floor right off the bat. If you're just recording light levels, not color levels, but light levels, then you are getting a cleaner image.
Presumably a better dynamic range.
Yeah. It's just it's bumping everything up. Now you could take a monochrome out with a bunch of colored filters, red, green, and blue filter, put things on a tripod and shoot static images, one of each color, and then combine them in post and get color images that would be just as good as those black and white images. But I mean, nobody's doing that. So.
Yeah. We should do that for a blog article.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it, actually.
Do it.
You
can
should
read that.
I have to commend you, Joey. Like, I sort of have like a hatred towards Leica simply because I am so pragmatic. But when I listen to you talk about Leicas, it makes me want to give them another try. So.
Yeah, I'm going to rent one this weekend.
Here's my full, just raw feelings about Leica. They were born in the early age of cameras. when a lot of people were using them for reportage, when that was a young thing. 35 millimeter was easy to use. It was compact. But as SLRs came out, as you had Nikon and Canon, and people started to switch to that, and Leica became much more niche. The evolution of Leica over the last, 50, 70, 100 years or whatever, has turned it into almost purely an art camera. Most people are not taking them into the trenches anymore. People aren't using them for reportage. And because of this long-standing tradition and this massive evolution into this niche art world, it's cultivated its own mystique, and there really is a feel. Plus, they do have a very unique look, just like Zeiss has a look, Canon has a look, Nikon has a look. They all have a look, but people don't talk about that. People talk about the Leica look. It is a cult following through and through, and I completely understand that, and I know why people hate it for that. All we're saying is love what you love. Let people love it.
Do you want to hear something I think we should adopt from Leica?
Sure.
So they make Cine lenses too, and we've been considering carrying those. We don't yet, but anyway, so this is why I've encountered them at cinema trade shows. They were at Cinegear last time I was there, and their entire team had matching red shorts, white Oxford cloth dress shirts, but with the top button unbuttoned. A little bit of like jaunty summer dress shirt.
Oh, I love this so
with
much.
a matching red scarf with the Leica logo and just like tiny. It looked so fucking cool, so fucking European and summery, and it made me feel like a schlub to be in my like Lensrentals baseball cap.
Oh, I love the Germans.
We need to adopt cooler, jaunty uniforms.
I'm a huge mid-century fan, and like Scandinavian design and German design is like, it's beautiful, and it's I don't know. That's part of the draw for me.
Well,
it's all of that.
I'm going to cut it off. We've talked about Leica for too long.
Have we?
Yes.
Yes, we have.
Thank you both. Thank you both for joining me. This was fun. We'll have to do it again soon with lenses.
Yeah.
I'm
all right.
excited about that.
Goodbye. Join us again on the Lensrentals podcast.
See y'all later. Rental Leica.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, this is Ryan. Normally, this is where you'd be hearing Roger give you an inspirational quote, but we wanted to jump in instead and briefly address the COVID-19 pandemic. This is affecting pretty much every industry financially, so it's extremely important if you, like me, are in the privileged position of still collecting a paycheck to support your community however you can. After you've donated to food banks, libraries, shelters, and other local resources that are helping the people most affected by this, I'd urge you to also support any local artists or freelancers making work you enjoy. To that end, here are some former guests of the podcast who we think you should check out. The Women's Weekend Film Challenge is a week-long filmmaking challenge specifically for women with the goal of connecting crew members to creators and helping end the gender employment gap on film crews. They're doing really, really cool work, and they accept donations on their website, womensweekendfilmchallenge.com. Indie Memphis is a Memphis arts nonprofit that screens independent films all year and puts on my very favorite film festival in the world every fall. They accept donations at indiememphis.com. Our friends at Indie Film Lab in Montgomery, Alabama are still open right now as of this recording and available for your film development needs. If you don't shoot film, they also do prints and they sell extremely cool merch at indiefilmlab.com. Lastly, if you have any local photo or video related artists or small businesses that you think could use a shout out, let us know, mention them and tag us at Lensrentals on Instagram, and we will promote as many as we possibly can. Okay, thanks for listening and stay tuned.